Let me start by saying, good evening, Obsidians. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ariel Lisman, Executive Director of Eugene Parks Foundation, and on behalf of the EPF board and our co-host, Sapien Private Wealth Management, led by the one and only one, Greg Irwin. Woohoo, exactly. Greg, you join the Obsidians, you get more applause, okay? I wanna warmly welcome the Sapien community, the Obsidians, EPF supporters, all of you. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the final Parks Talk of 2025 called A Sense of Discovery. And also it is our annual Parks Legacy Award celebration. In a recent conversation between Greg and me just a month ago, Greg, who has seen more than a few pitches and asks in his career, he challenged us to say less and show more. So tonight, we are proud to present the world premiere of We Are EPF. And please, don't blink. This one moves fast.
For over 20 years, the Eugene Parks Foundation has connected our community to the outdoors through the conservation of more than 100 acres of natural habitat, the creation of new trails for hikers, bikers, and runners, and family-friendly park programs. We're helping Eugene grow greener, healthier, and more connected. Join us in our mission of conservation, recreation, and the activation of an exceptional park system. Visit eugeneparksfoundation.org to learn more and help make Eugene's thriving outdoors your legacy.
Coming soon to a theater near you. So after our last event in September, I was convinced we were headed towards a calm, steady, predictable end of the year. And I was very wrong. So if you'll join me, I'd like to take you on a quick loop trail through the past few weeks of my life. And I would like to start with yesterday afternoon, with a topic you might not expect from a Parks Foundation. A few years ago, we identified a major barrier preventing thousands of local kids from participating in structured recreation programs during summer break, or in other words, summer camps, which represents an important piece of our community's childcare crisis. Because removing barriers to recreation is core to our mission, we dove right in. Yesterday, we had both Eugene and Springfield school districts, the Chamber of Commerce, and all the major program providers in one room, working together to expand capacity and affordability for summer programs, an incredibly hopeful moment for our community. Now, shifting from recreation access back to conservation, going backward, just 3 days ago, we received a go-ahead to acquire 17.5 acres of natural habitat for permanent protection. It's coming. If you remember last year, we raised $1.2 million to purchase 73 acres, now Forest Ranch Park. And we were thrilled, well, most of us were thrilled. Some of us left unsatisfied. I will not name names. And if you look at the map, the lower left corner Looks like someone took a bite out of it, and we wanted it back. These 3 parcels complete the protection of Spencer Creek frontage, block any future development along the park boundary, expand the potential looping trail network, and create a secluded 90-plus natural refuge, 90-plus acre of natural refuge. And because the owner offered a fair price for a 2025 purchase, it's a rare and a time-sensitive opportunity. And so, we're in it now. It's $420,000. We already have major donors who committed for half of the price. And we're in a matching challenge now. So if you feel this is your passion, if you feel this is something you want to pitch in, then I know a guy. Is John Winquist here in the crowd? Yes. Can you raise your hand? This is the guy we all blame for everything. If you are interested, call him. Talk to him after this. Yeah, he has some good flyers. But that was, yeah, sure. That was 3 days ago. Let's rewind a bit further. The city of Eugene is currently building the first phase of Susan Arley Park. Yeah, including an extension of the Ridgeline Trail, new mountain bike trails, and trailhead and parking lot near LCC. Now, as always, and I keep mentioning it, as always, public funds have limits. So about 10 days ago, we began gearing up for a blitz campaign to fund the 4 missing mountain bike trails and 2 bike hubs. These additions are the crown jewels of the system, transforming the park from a good local ride into a true regional and statewide destination that attracts visitors, supporters, local businesses, and help draw top talent. If we're successful, the entire park could be fully built and open by the end of next year. Now, 1 week before that, we were in the mayor's office helping launch a coordinated effort around improving river access and river experiences in Eugene. And we should all ask ourselves, do Eugenians really need to drive to Bend just to enjoy the river? No. Okay. It really works better when you do what I say. This effort has extraordinary support from all corners of the community, and we're excited to advance this effort and see what is possible. South Eugene Meadows Loop Trail is at 60% completion. We stopped for the winter and will continue in the spring, so all of us, hopefully, knock on, will be able to walk it all mid-summer with a brand new parking lot that the city is building, and city is building the trail, and this is all funded by, the trail is funded by Eugene Parks Foundation supporters. So thank you guys for making this happen. Two more projects that we're looking at: extension of the Wild Iris Ridge west and north, working with the Nature Conservancy, the City of Eugene, BLM, and on the right side, Forest Ranch, South Eugene Meadows, Spencer Butte, and MRT holds some chunk of the land over there. And how do we build a 13-mile loop trail over there? Yet to be seen, but we're working on it every day, I swear to God. In terms of activation, we launched the Agents of Discovery app, which is an augmented reality game activating, gamifying our parks. 700 already played all the missions. We encourage you to take your kids, to take your grandkids, and go out to the parks and download the app, it's free, and go and play. Yes. So now, as promised, we've looped back around to yesterday. And I really thought I'd give you all a break tonight. But then one of our supporters, a proud Legacy Circle member, called. For those unfamiliar, the Legacy Circle is about 60 extraordinary individuals and couples who fuel our operations through a 3-year pledge of $1,200 per year. And truly, without them, none of what I've described would be possible. So he called with a message to me, which actually to you, and a challenge. The challenge is if we recruit 20 new Legacy Circle members, he will match their first-year contribution by the end of 25. And so we're, again, in it to win it. So tonight, if our work resonates with your values and your love to this community, we invite you to join the Legacy Circle, strengthen Eugene Parks, and help fuel the Foundation's future. We are honored that hundreds of Eugenians choose to shape their legacy through the work of the Eugene Parks Foundation. And thank you for being part of this journey and for being here tonight. So thank you. To introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to invite EPF board member Ben Helphand to the stage.
Good evening, everybody. Okay. I too would want to honor the Obsidians. Or how many? Raise your hand if you're an Obsidian. Whoa. Obviously, have had a successful membership drive. Okay. And also thank Sapient for being a sponsor of this evening talk. I have the unusual pleasure of introducing my son, Ben. But I need to give you a little information about Ben and why he's an ideal choice for speaking to this group. This is not nepotism, okay? Just to let you know. Yeah, okay. Ben is a native of Eugene. He went to Edison, Roosevelt, and South, and often speaks, in fact, and actually spoke to several of his former teachers who are here tonight, what a great education, in fact, he had in Eugene. One of my favorite stories about Ben is, for very odd family reasons, he went to summer camp in Maine. It's really stupid. From Oregon, you go to Maine, really silly. And most of the kids were from the East, New York, Philadelphia, and so on. And he said, and it rains in the summer in Maine. One day he said to me, I don't understand it. When it rains, the other kids stay in the bunk. And he couldn't understand this, for as a kid growing up in Eugene, rain was not an impediment, but an opportunity, because with rain you get mud. And with mud you can play in it, which is something Ben did all the time. Ben was an excellent student and a reader, but he loved and still loves being outside. Growing up here, he rode his bike everywhere. He built forts in our yards. And at the coast, he climbed the Butte, he climbed the columns, he hiked on the Metolius, where we have a cabin, he backpacked in the mountains. He could have been an Obsidian, obviously. And older, he hiked in the Atlas Mountains when studying in Morocco, and in the Negev when we lived in Israel, and as a family, traveled often to parks, gardens, and playgrounds around the world to see the things I wanted to see as a landscape architect. He was and is a nature kid. From Eugene, Ben went to college at Wesleyan, and then the University of Chicago, where he studied the history of religion. Then he studied journalism at Northwestern, worked for a group called the Center for Neighborhood Technology, Chicago, and then took a break working on Obama's Senate campaign. And then for many, 15 years or so, he's been director of NeighborSpace, which he will talk about, the urban land trust for the city of Chicago. 15 years ago, though, Ben took us, my wife Margot and I, trespassing through a chain link fence up an embankment to see an abandoned railroad line, okay, filled with trash at the moment. Ben had a vision for this place and enrolled others in his vision, including the city of Chicago And he became and still continues the founder of the Friends of the Bloomingdale Trail, an almost 3-mile-long linear embankment, which is both a bike and pedestrian way, now celebrating its 10th anniversary this year and unites 4 neighborhoods. It has matured as an urban attraction that links together these neighborhoods. He won't say it, I will say it. This is actually an extraordinary achievement for the city and a gift to the community. That's a few facts. But what ties these together is Ben's abiding interest in people and community and in making places and opportunities for people to come together. It's something that he has a knack for. In high school, when kids are in cliques, everyone's had this experience, Ben always had friends that cut across different groups. The kids in the cafeteria, the jocks, the stoners, the nerds, the outcasts, all of them seemed to be hanging out at our house. That interest in people never wavered. In his current job, he connects with folks in every neighborhood and every walk of life. He hobnobs with the gardeners, with the donors, and with politicians. His family notes that he never stops moving and exploring, and he does that. He brings along his wife, Dawn, who teaches philosophy at Loyola, his daughter, Sella, who is an incredibly talented artist, just starting high school, and objectively as a grandfather, I can say she is, in fact, incredibly talented. Cyrus in the 4th grade, who can't decide if he wants to be a botanist or a paleobotanist, and could explain that to you. Ben's energy isn't just physical, he's constantly coming up with new schemes. For example, such as the Seeds for a City, giving away new native plants annually in Chicago for city gardeners, or his City of Big Shovels program to have the city's sidewalks plowed during the winter, or having a barcode on the Bloomingdale Trail during Halloween so you could listen to ghost stories, or the graffiti mural competition he organized on the trail's embankment, or the Serviceberry cookbook he just came up with, or his Build Your Own Cairn booklet. I won't give away his talk, but he will talk about nature play gardens as well as the Bloomingdale Trail. But nature play gardens, places where children living in the heart of the central city can experience the joy and discovery that comes with being outside, where they can climb on logs, play in dirt, and invent their own adventures. Margot describes Ben as a practical idealist. Ben believes and puts into practice what many of us know intuitively. Certainly the city obsidians know this and practice this, that contact with the natural world, especially for children, builds resilience, creativity, and a sense of belonging. Exactly what Ben experienced growing up in Eugene. And Ben has told me what his ambition is he said, Chicago has everything except topography. It's flat as hell, and that his mission is to turn Chicago into Oregon. He said, I didn't say it. I'm deeply proud, we are deeply proud of Ben, especially that he's never stopped being curious and adventurous and caring deeply about others. So with great pride and love, I introduce my son, Ben Helphand.
Well, thank you for having me here. This is very exciting to be back home in front of my preschool teachers and middle school teachers and the parents of all of my friends growing up. No pressure. Thanks. But I mean, following up on what my dad was saying, it is very true that my life growing up in Eugene is very much the motivation for the work that I've done since I've left, and it's very exciting Ariel, to see the images and the plans that the Parks Foundation is working on, because I look at those maps and I can see even 30 years ago. I mean, I left Eugene in 1993, more than 30 years ago. Even back then, we had wonderful parks and open space, and now it's just at another level. It's kind of mind-boggling, but I look at those maps and I know all the spots that I used to go. Some were actually parks, and some were trespassing, as you've learned is a hobby of mine. And out by LCC is where I first went mountain biking, and Mount Baldy and all of these places. It's just they're in my DNA. And and I'm not going to turn Chicago into Eugene. That's impossible. But there are elements of it that are inspiring. And there's certainly things that I took for granted leaving Eugene that when I went out into the world, I was just frankly confused that they didn't exist in other places. I was like, what do you mean there's no riverfront path? Are you stupid? And what do you mean there's no gender-neutral bathrooms? They're like, it took a long time to catch up. So today I'm going to talk about two projects. The first is the Bloomingdale Trail, and then I'm going to talk about my actual day job, which is working at NeighborSpace and work that we've done focusing on nature playgrounds in Chicago. So I will dive in. So I moved to Chicago a couple years after college in '99, and to go to the University of Chicago. And I lived on the northwest side of the city, in Wicker Park, Logan Square area, and there was a railroad embankment, an unused railroad embankment, and this was just a couple of blocks from the apartment that I lived in. And it intrigued me. I went under it all the time for a while, always wondered about it. And then one day, going through an alley, I saw a little hole in the fence, and this wasn't the actual photograph because there were no iPhones then, and I didn't have a camera, but I recreated the scene. And I crawled up there. It was about 18 feet up, and I went up, and it looked a little bit something like this. It was 2 tracks wide. It was overgrown, and it was absolutely beautiful. Chicago is very, very dense, and for me, it was like taking a deep breath. I went up, and when I got to the top, all of the worries of the city just kind of melted away. All of the kind of excessive traffic, where I just forgot about. And here I was in this little 2-track wide, 18-foot up, overgrown space with some nice trees, some weed trees, some native plants, and some flowers, and I just fell in love with it. And then if you look on the right side there, I saw that there was already a path. Something I'm very familiar with in Oregon, these were these little desire lines. I was immediately aware that I was not the first person up here. There were thousands of people who had crawled up the embankment and pounded this trail with their feet. This, in my mind, was the first Bloomingdale Trail. This is the one that nobody named it, nobody asked for it, nobody designed it. They just made it by using it. And I think those of us in the trail world know that this is often how things start. Not always, but quite often things get started because people just use it, and then other people catch up and realize what people want. So I spent a long time going up there. There were 3 different access parts. There was one place right at the end, right by the highway, where somebody built a wooden staircase. So it just made it easy to get up and down. But that's me on the right, exploring at one time, looking out on a church. But people used it for jogging, and there was still some railroad cars active on certain sections of it, but it wasn't very, very active. So we would, climb up on the cars, kind of like we used to climb up on machinery on the Ridgeline Trail growing up every once in a while. But this is an aerial photograph. We had a friend who was did the traffic news in the morning, and he took some shots for us. But this gives you a sense of the context. Chicago's very dense. This is mostly 2 and 3 flat homes, so the need to look for a place to get away from it at all was very real. But this sliced right east-west on the northwest side of the city for almost 3 miles. And in one spot, it goes right under the train. So if you're in Chicago and you're taking the train from O'Hare, you go right over the Bloomingdale Trail. And so I would often be walking under here and waving at people on the train. Fast forward 10 years, not 10 years, fast forward 13 years, and here I am wearing that god-awful yellow shirt, and there's Senator Dick Durbin and Rahm Emanuel and a couple other elected officials who are no longer in office. And there we are at the ribbon cutting of the Bloomingdale Trail. There were tens of thousands of people out for opening day. There's Rahm, they let him do the first bike ride. but I snuck up there the night before and went biking, so don't tell him. So, so it was. I mean, it was, very exciting, great success. But it's worth asking the question: how did we get here? And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes jumping into that. And like so many things in Chicago, there's another aerial photograph of this is at the western end, looking towards downtown. You can see the skyline in the distance there. But like many things in Chicago, it all begins with the Great Fire. 1871. After the fire, the city gave permission for the railroad to build a train line on the street, right down Bloomingdale Avenue, east-west. They did quite a bit of that. Population wasn't so huge at that point, and they didn't think this was a problem. But if you're familiar with Chicago history, it grew very quickly, and there became a lot of conflicts with all of these at-grade railroads, and people were starting to get hurt and killed very regularly. And it was a real crisis in the city. And I'm told it was at the turn of the last century, it was a big campaign issue with the mayors of what are we going to do about these railroads? And so they voted to require all the railroads to elevate the lines. That's why Chicago has so many elevated lines, because communities were organizing. Sometimes I think of it as the bookend for the Friends of the Bloomingdale Trail. We were organizing of what to do with this infrastructure that wasn't being used. There were community groups organizing 120 years ago to help their communities survive by separating the railroads from everyday use. So they built it. Bloomingdale line was not one of the most major rail lines in the city, so they did it late. It was 1911 to 1913, and then for 100 years, you can see the train line in the back there. For 100 years, it served a bunch of light industry along that corridor. Ludwig drums that Ringo Starr used. They had a manufacturing plant there, Schwinn bicycles. Some people called it the Sugar Trail because it actually delivered a lot of sugar. Chicago, until very recently, was a major center for candy production, but most of that has moved out to the suburbs. When I was visiting it, you'd still see some trains on the line, like you see there on the right, but it would mostly stopped. And by the early 1990s, nature had pretty much reclaimed it. They put a clamp on it on the eastern end, on the western end, and trees started growing up between the tracks. And there was actually a Chicago Tribune reporter that was in the conductor's seat during the last train ride on the section. So I happened to get a copy of that. So nature reclaimed, and it wasn't used by the early 90s. But meanwhile, down below, the community was interacting with this space, as is always the case. The community pokes around, they're trespassing, they're using it, their life goes on. That's me and my wife during our engagement photos we did. And I'm told from earlier today, somebody said today is actually the anniversary of the UN Rights of Children Declaration, and that mural was a 1979 recreation of the Declaration of the Rights of Children that we were in front of. And we've actually redone that mural more recently, so it lives on. But this was life. People all across the Northwest Side, you talk to anybody who grew up there, they lived next to it. They took shelter under it in the rain. Kids played on the embankments. That water picture there, to me, is like one of the most quintessential Chicago pictures. Somebody opened a sewer cap on a 95-degree day, and people were just going bonkers. I biked by it one day and spotted it. It's just beautiful. Up top, the more intrepid, not everybody trespassed up top, but some people did. And up top, once the train line stopped, people used it for all sorts of things. Cross-country skiing. My friends like to go mountain biking there. And people would go up with their kids just for exploring. That's what I did. I didn't have kids at the time. But for me, it satisfied the same thing of like beachcombing, going to the coast. I would just go up there, and I was looking I would find railroad. I have a big box of railroad spikes that I found, other weird signs, balls, doll heads, the usual stuff that you find when you're looking around. The Bloomingdale Trail was for lovers. In the middle of, when I first went up there, I became enamored of the elevated trails, and I found a cheap trip to Paris one long weekend and went by myself to see the Promenade Plantée, the kind of grandmother of elevated trails. and just spent the weekend going back and forth on there. They had no bicycles on that trail, but one thing I noticed is a lot of people making out. And this really made an impression on me. So I'm like, oh, we need places like this in Chicago. Maybe it's because their apartments are smaller there. But people were up there playing. This was a Halloween event, and it was also a place where just unexpected things happened. This was a friend's marching band, did a performance up there. More than twice, I found abandoned pianos. It's not easy to drag a piano up 18 feet embankment, but somebody did, I'm told, because they were shooting music videos up there. So it drew people in. It drew me in, and then in 2003, I found other people who had fallen in love with it. There was a friend named Josh who had written it as a master's thesis at University of Illinois, Chicago, this concept of a trail. And he invited a couple other people, and 6 of us formed the Friends of the Bloomingdale Trail. And this was actually our second brochure. Our first brochure was only in English, and we realized very quickly that was a mistake, and so we reprinted it, and this was our first vision of what the trail could be. Here's our map. And we set out to organizing. I think at first we thought there was going to be a lot of opposition. We thought it was a bit of a harebrained scheme. Some of these organizers had been a part of a group called Break the Gridlock, which were like radical cyclists and pedestrians. And they had ideas of like, let's depave Lakeshore Drive, which is still an active campaign, but it hasn't happened yet. It has happened in other cities, so it's plausible, but unlikely. So I put this in the bucket of those kind of ideas of like, this is going to be 20. I'm going to be at a ribbon cutting when I'm 60. I thought, but we started talking to people in the neighborhoods, major community organizations, elected officials, neighbors, and people generally liked the idea. More than that, they said, "Oh, we already use it." I remember talking to families. There's a big ice cream shop on one end, and they're like, "Oh, I go up there, take my kids through the fence, and we go to Tasty Freeze, and we come home." I'm like, "All right, this is already part of people's lives." So we found a lot of enthusiasm, and our motto at the time was, "Make the implausible feel inevitable." And we did that in everything that we could. We just wanted to treat it as a reality, and then other people would come along for our vision. And I think that's something that people in open space work do a lot. You're painting a picture for people. The city also shared this vision. They were a little bit behind, but they had embarked upon something called the Logan Square Open Space Plan. Chicago is broken up into 77 community areas, and they rank them by per capita open space. And there are 4 neighborhoods along the Bloomingdale Trail, and 2 of them had like the second and 6th least amount of open space. So they did this planning process to try to remedy that. There's a lot of kids on the Northwest Side who had no place to play. This is a real group of kids playing volleyball in an alley. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So they wanted to bring more open space to the Northwest Side, and there really was no available land. So they identified this unused railroad as almost 13 acres of new land. And it got passed by the Plan Commission, the same commission that passed the Burnham Plan, like the vision for Chicago. But so it was a big stamp of approval, but it had $0 associated with this. This was just a plan on paper, and there's lots of plans on paper in Chicago. So we made it our mission to keep this on the front burner, to hold people's feet to the fire. We took this plan, this recommendation number 4, I went down to the Center for Neighborhood Technology where I worked and Xeroxed thousands of them. And we brought them around to anybody and everybody who would listen, because no better thing with municipalities is to use their own plans against them, right? Hold them to it. These are the concept drawings from their original plan. Community groups also had plans. So their neighborhood associations, Logan Square Neighborhood Association and Bickerdike Redevelopment Corporation, they put the plan, you can see the railroad on the bottom there, into the community's vision as well. So what we had is this layer cake of visions. Friends of the Bloomingdale Trail, the city's plan, and the community plan. And I really, really believe it's when all of these things come together that things are possible. I find, especially in Chicago, that the elected officials, people in the departments, they don't want to push something if the community's against it or if there's no political will. But if you can kind of take the friction away and make it easier for them, things can come together. So we did a community visioning plan, 2007, 2008. We did whatever we could to keep this in people's imagination. Bike rides, trail cleanups. You know, we would just invent reasons to go out there because we find that people would have a very hard time imagining the space if they hadn't been up there. So the trail cleanups were an excuse to do that. And then this group of people there we're training docents. So we trained people to be docents to give people tours of the trail. You got to have swag. We did a coloring competition. This was our first poster. I think we're now on our 8th poster over the years. Chicago's a big screen print, has a big screen print scene. So this actually was really wonderful for us. I love going into houses and seeing our poster on the wall. Because it's elevated, you have to get up and down. So we were always looking at the access points along this 3-mile corridor. And one day, there was a for sale sign on this lot down the street from me. And we were all volunteers. We didn't have the ability to buy a piece of land. We reached out to the Trust for Public Land. We needed some heavy hitters. And they looked at it, and they ended up buying it and developing it into the first future access point to the trail. We worked to have it named for the Puerto Rican poet Julio de Burgos, working with community groups. And it was important because right after that, the country fell into recession. And so nothing was happening with the trail. It was estimated at the time to be a $50-60 million project. The city had applied for federal funding that they received, but the state couldn't do the match. So it was just stalled. And it was very, very frustrating. So the Julio de Burgos Park was something that we could do in the interim while we were building towards this bigger vision. And I always think of it like if you build a staircase in your house or a door, but there's nothing behind it, everybody you invite over is going to be like, where does that go? And so that's what it was. We had event after event at Julio de Burgos, and every time we were there, people would be like, hey, what's this thing? And we're like, well, funny you should ask. Future Bloomingdale Trail. And so we kept the kind of pilot light on that way. And you got to play the long game in open space. So fast forward a couple of years, we're coming out of recession, and our longtime mayor, Daley, stepped down, and we had an election, and we proposed the Bloomingdale Trail to all the candidates. They all gave it support, but Rahm Emanuel, who eventually was elected, he said, I'm going to build it in my first term. We're like, whoa, that seems a little bit fast, but thank you. And it was a little bit fast in hindsight, but I'm still glad it's there. So we very, very quickly, between 2011 2013, there was on hyperdrive, a design process, a really condensed process to get a vision for the trail. And we got this beautiful vision you can see there on the bottom, 3-mile multi-use trail with mixed use of biking, walking, and running. And just 2 years later, we had a groundbreaking. And then 2 years of construction. The one on the bottom is one of my favorites because bridges are by far the most expensive piece of infrastructure in this operation. Just millions and millions of dollars. And so what we did, in the spirit of reusing this industrial infrastructure, we tore down one bridge that was unusable on Western Avenue, if you know Chicago, big street right in the middle. And then we recycled the bridge on the one end of the trail and moved it over. So that bridge on Western is actually from Ashland. And it saved millions of dollars. So it was really, really beautiful to see that creativity. So then in 2015, on June 6th, we had the ribbon cutting. You already saw the ribbon cutting at the beginning with the senator and the mayor. The more important ribbon cutting was this one. 30 minutes before the official ribbon cutting, at every single access point, we had community groups and people who had worked on the trail and neighbors who were excited about the trail having their own ribbon cutting. And here I just collaged them all together. It was very meaningful. I mean, this was the work of thousands of people, and they were all excited to be a part of it. I still go to people's houses and they have their little piece of the ribbon. So it was open 2015. Welcome to the Bloomingdale Trail. It really was an incredible experience. But let's go back to, this is just to remind you, this is what it looked like. Pretty big transformation. This is actually the same spot as that. Humboldt Boulevard. This kid didn't exist when the other picture was taken. He's 9 now. in terms of the fulfillment of the trail, like what is its impact? For me, this picture really captures it for me. It is a place where you can just, I get back to that first moment when I was trespassing up there, where I had that sense of excitement and I felt like I was taking a deep breath and the pressure of the city dissipates. And I could just see the city with new eyes. And now I see it through his eyes, and he gets to explore all of the interesting plants. This is a smoke bush, which I love. And hopefully this is the only pretend smoking he does. So this is also that same spot, just a few steps over, Humboldt Boulevard. And this picture always reminds me of what I call the tides of Bloomingdale. If you spent the whole day up there, you would have a huge onslaught of people at 8:30 in the morning. You know, hundreds and hundreds of bikers going by. And then it would slow down a little bit. And then it would pick up with the strollers, people getting to school. Then it would slow down a little bit. Then you'd have the afternoon walkers, and then it would slow down. And then you'd have the evening commute. Then it would slow down, and then you'd have the evening stroll crowd. It's the tides of Bloomingdale. We just celebrated 10 years. 12 million people have used it so far, about 1.2 million people a year. I still have to pinch myself every time I go up there. And a few weeks ago, I did a bike commuter challenge with the Chicago Department of Transportation. I was hanging out with a couple of friends. I'd be like, I wonder what's quicker, if you drive or if you're biking on the Bloomingdale Trail. Not driving on the trail, but driving on the road next to it. So they're like, let's try. So we took a video. And the biking on the trail during a commute home was a full 30% quicker than driving. So it genuinely, in terms of like effects on people's lives, this gives them 30% of their time back. And it's done that to me. My daughter ended up going to school right off the trail. And so we ended up commuting. Sometimes I would joke to people and say, like, I spent 15 years helping to build this thing just so she could get to school easier. I'm that stubborn. Some of the things in the design of the trail are worth noting that, railroads are not designed for trails. Rail trail conversions are wonderful. Sometimes they can be a bit flat, a little bit boring, because they're designed for freight. So when the Bloomingdale Trail was converted, they actually dug into the embankment strategically in different places, so that as you're moving up and down, you actually have little gentle contours, and it moves your eyes around a little bit, just enough to make it interesting. Also helps to make it ADA accessible a little bit more easily, so you can kind of kill a couple birds with one stone. When the trail allows for it, when it's wider, it actually opened up into these little nature trails. Those are my favorite part. I'm less interested in the multi-use trail, less interested in the just biking from end to end. I'm interested in the meandering trails. People think people use trails, sometimes you're like, I'm going to go end to end. I'm going to do the whole thing. Some people do that, but in practice, people often use trails more like this. Loop-de-loops. They use it as part of circles and ways to get around their own neighborhood. They'll go up on the trail for 3 blocks, then come down, take their favorite route. The way the trails live in people's lives are a little bit different sometimes than how people imagine. It is a living work of art, and the signature project that was designed into the Bloomingdale Trail was an environmental sentinel piece. So we have a team of citizen scientists that have been monitoring the bloom times of the serviceberry for a decade. And it's wonderful. It's been giving it, we upload our information to the National Phenology Network. But the serviceberry is also an edible berry. And when the artist originally proposed this project, that wasn't part of the plan. That was part of my plan. Because I grew up in Oregon, and I know the power of a blackberry to bring people into open spaces and get people exploring. So I'm like, oh, these are edible? We are building a whole program around these edible berries. Every June, we have people out there picking service berries. There's a whole generation of people in Chicago who never had foraged for a berry. And now people are buying this and planting it in their own yard. We celebrated this by actually collecting people's serviceberry recipes last year and publishing a little cookbook. So this is one of the things of Oregon that I am trying to bring to Chicago, is that you can actually have foraging in the urban area. You don't have to drive up to Michigan or Wisconsin to experience berry picking. It can be blocks from your house. We've done some big events. Every year we do a signature 5K. We had 700 people a few months ago. It's our biggest annual fundraiser. But one of the things we've noticed is that, for the most part, the run accepted, people don't want to do big events on the trail. There was this idea early on that we're going to do these big walks and we're going to do a procession. But we found a lot of pushback. A couple of people called them forced marches. And people want to do trails by themselves, with a buddy, with their family, with a small group of people. That's how they experience it. So we adjusted our programming after the first couple of years. And my dad talked about the ghosts on the trail. And we switched more to a go at your own pace kind of stuff. So yes, you can go up there and listen to these true ghost stories all collected from people who live along the trail. Totally true. Partnered with Chicago Philharmonic, listening to original pieces of music. And we always try to do more education around the plants on the trail. There's such an incredible palette of plants up there. We really, it's part of our mission to get people to learn about it. There's beehives on the trail. I have so much honey in my basement, if anybody wants some. And then we've done camping up there. This space is actually kind of interesting because this was one little section of the trail that the designers just forgot about. It just wasn't in the plan, so it was just a little extra space. But yes, again, we celebrated 10 years, and our biggest marking of the 10-year anniversary is we're doing 1 poster a month for the whole year, and some of them we're turning into murals. And this is actually, you saw at the very beginning, aerial photograph. The observatory is on the western end, and it's a beautiful spot. It's a great view, but I see it as a mistake. I see it as a missed opportunity. It was designed to be an observatory, and it's now planted very heavily with bramble, thick thorn bushes. But look at these kids. What do they want to do up there? They want to climb up it. They want it to be a climbable hill. That is not what it was designed for. So I look at this and I see, we should have taken our time on this and done this piece a little bit better. But it reminds me of, and I'm going to switch over to the other part of the talk, talking about NeighborSpace. It reminds me of where my heart is, certainly with my kids, but definitely with play. And somebody asked me at a talk a number of years ago what project I was most proud of in Chicago, and I think they assumed I was going to say the Bloomingdale Trail because it's so big, it's a $100 million project. But no, I did not think of the Bloomingdale Trail. My thoughts went to the smaller neighborhood scale spaces that I've worked on, because even as impactful in the millions of people that have been on the trail, it's those tiny little encounters with nature that I find most inspiring. And Bloomingdale Trail is 100% volunteer. I've never made a penny off the Bloomingdale Trail. NeighborSpace, I'm the executive director of, and I have been for 17 years. We are a land trust for community managed open space in Chicago. We've grown quite a bit over the years. We own or have long-term leases for 143 gardens, and we fill that space not filled by the Chicago Park District or the Cook County Forest Preserve, kind of small community managed spaces, little vegetable gardens, tiny little natural areas, little community forest, performance spaces, neighborhood farms, all of these different kind of things that don't fit neatly into the other open space boxes. They're all community-led by neighbors. We have a small staff of 7 people. We're not out there gardening 143 spaces. They're gardening them. We're supporting them with insurance, technical support, water, mulch, all different kinds, emergencies, mostly emergencies. So I started in 2007, and 3 years later, I get this call from a principal on the southwest side of Chicago in Little Village neighborhood. It's one of the main and Latino neighborhoods of Chicago. And they had a high school there, Community Links High School, and they had a playground that was too small, and they didn't like it anyway. And on the other side of the school, they had this vacant lot. They're like, help us turn this into a playground. And I said, we don't do playgrounds, because we don't. You should talk to the park district. Like, we already talked to the park district. What can you do with us? I'm like, well, let me think about it. I knew this principal, and I wanted to figure out how to help. So put yourself in my shoes for a minute. and I'm going to ask you to just spend 15 seconds. Think about your earliest childhood outdoor play memories. And when you're ready, just shout out some answers.
Doorbell ditch.
I don't know what that is.
Kick the can. Climbing trees.
Stealing apples from Phil Sheridan's garden.
Awesome. Thank you. This is what you said. No, this is what other people had said, but it's similar to what you had said, because we've done this before, and we find the pattern always emerges of what people's earliest childhood memories are. Places where kids are in charge, places where you're directly interacting with the natural world, mud, insects, rocks, flowers, sticks, where you're allowed to take a little bit of risk, tree climbing, if you will. And where it's kind of intimate spaces for kids. And so this is what I thought about when I was confronted with this question. And I looked back in my lizard brain to my Eugene self, and I thought about play, and my thoughts always go to the Oregon coast of the ideal playscape. The ocean provides an endless supply of things to play with. Things to build with, and the sand is the perfect play environment. And so I thought to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful to bring this to a little village in Chicago? But I couldn't just go to the alderman and the principal and say, let's do this because. So we actually had evidence. I came across a professor of environmental psychology in City University of New York, I just stumbled across a paper he had written called Undesigned for Play, where he was arguing that he had done a research project of community gardens in New York City and came to the conclusion they were uniquely positioned to host nature play in New York, and gave all the reasons why. So I just copied them, and it fit almost perfectly in Chicago. Chicago's not as dense as New York City, but it fit very, very well. Small, intimate spaces. They were deeply embedded in the neighborhoods. They had community groups supporting it so that you had eyes on the children and oversight. You had people to deal with the loose parts that are necessary for nature play. And so then I took this idea along with a whole host of evidence of why nature play is helpful for children, which I won't go into all of the science, but it's good on all fronts. And we brought this to the principal, we brought this to our elected officials, and we said, let's build this here. And people supported it. They were still a little bit suspicious because the grooves for traditional playgrounds run deep. People's expectation that you're gonna have a swing, you're gonna have a slide is deep. So even after people agreed, the neighborhood groups, the block club, agreed to move forward on this nature play vision, we would still get people saying like, so where does the swing go? We're like, it doesn't go. And so we spent a couple of years doing community design, and we came up with this vision. And a couple of years later, building, I guess that's the pattern. Design for 2 years, build for 2 years. Being NeighborSpace and not the Chicago Park District, we built it with the community. So those folks in the middle are actually youth hired from the neighborhood as part of the Student Conservation Association. The kids on the other side are kids from the neighborhood helping out with a planting day. Some stuff we had to do professionally because it involved heavy equipment, but whenever possible, we did it with the community. And then in 2015, actually the same year, the Bloomingdale Trail opened. It was a big year. We opened the Jardincito, the little garden. It was blessed by a priest and the local Aztec dancers, because we wanted to cover all of our bases. And I'm going to take you through a little walk through the Jardincito, of the basic play garden elements. The heart of it, what's woven through all of it, is what I call the hot lava path. The ability, some kind of a line connecting through the whole thing, so kids could hop from rock to stump and get through the whole thing. And we tested it out with real 4-year-olds. Our community partners with Catholic Charities insisted that they have a little hill because they really wanted to roll down the hill. So we put that in there for them. We had a play deck, not a stage, a play deck. It's got to be kid size. This is not for formal performances. This is for informal happenings that children put together. You could still have somebody give a talk from up there, but this is kid-sized. And that's an important thing. You gotta be careful with nature play, not to impose what the adults want or what would look good on Instagram. Often what looks good on Instagram is not fun. I had a teacher once who talked about the secret life of bushes, where he would crawl into bushes with the kids and take pictures. Like, this is the view you want. This is how kids experience it. For me, the play huts are probably the most important element. We build these little structures, not finished structures, not play houses. You build the suggestion of a fort, and then you have loose parts available in the garden and let them finish it. And they're gonna finish it a different way every single time. Sometimes it'll be with sticks, sometimes it'll be with burlap, and each time it'll be a different thing. They've created a little store here with this stump with different levels. Sometimes it'll be a fire station, sometimes it'll be a home. The point is, it's kid-driven, and it's up to them. Lots of places, especially for the little ones, to practice balance, to learn their bodies better. We paid very close attention to what we planted. We developed a whole palette of plants for play. We wanted to plant things that would provide interesting seed pods so that kids could incorporate them into their play. This is the opposite of what generally a Department of Forestry will do. They're doing planting for maintenance. You want it to drop as little as possible. We want it to drop as much as possible. I brought one today, seed pod from Hardencito. Musical instrument for the play that they do. Also learning from my kids. This is the currency of the playground. Whoever has the most seed pods controls the economy. So and I'm proud to say my daughter won. No. Pebble pool we use. Instead, it's a cousin of a sandbox, but endless variations playing with the pebbles. And then a little bit of water. Water can be very difficult because it can be very expensive and it can break. We adapted something here from a dog park. So that little thing that the kid is holding there is a thing that a dog would hit their nose on to give a little trickle. And we adapted it to a nature playground so the kids could fill up just little vessels and build their mud pies. Play kitchen. People in the neighborhood would come out and bring their unwanted kitchen implements and leave them there, and the kids would use them. We did a boulder maze, and those are the main elements of the Hardencito. When we launched, we learned very quickly that while the kids liked it, some of the adults needed a little hand-holding. The teachers at the school had a hard time wrapping their mind around how their lesson plans would incorporate into the Hardencito. They would come expecting it to be more like, here's my lesson plan and let's go through and the kids, do what I say, instead of standing back and letting the kids lead. So we did a series of education with the teachers, father's group, mother's group. Here's the father's group that I led on a trip through the hot lava path. And once they kind of had to do what you did, which is to take a moment and go back to their early childhood memories. Once they did, then they were better able to be partners with their children and encourage them to go during school and take them there on the weekend. This was that other playground on the front of the school that nobody liked to go to. So the impact of Hardencito, it's not just anecdotal. We had 3 separate studies that proved that this was working. And the one that is most compelling to me is we had a teacher who was at the school who actually did literacy observations and videoed kids in this playground and the Hardencito, and then analyzed the language that they used. And she found that in the nature playground that 44% of the language was cooperative versus at the traditional playground it was 8% cooperative. At the traditional playground it was either 50% silent, like they weren't talking at all to each other, or 27% conflict, whereas at the nature playground, it was only 15% conflict. So this wasn't very surprising to me, but I was glad to have it proved. When you're in the nature playground, unlike the traditional playground, children are forced to work together. They have to communicate with one another. When you're building a fort together, you have to talk about what you're doing in order to make your vision a reality. And that translates into the language that they use, and it helps build their vocabulary, build their communication skills. It has a real incredible effect. After the success of Hardencito, I went on a little bit of a kind of a learning mission, and I spent the summer in Berlin studying with a landscape designer there, and the nature play gardens in Berlin taught me more about water and sand and what's really possible. They have a different approach to litigiousness there, I would say, and so it was the playgrounds were so fun. What a wonderful place to go. And then at the same time in Chicago, a friend opened a forest play school. So we sent our kids to this forest play school in a forest preserve and learned a lot there. So what was happening was this idea of nature play was taking root in Chicago and spreading. NeighborSpace was part of it. We were part of building some of the first community managed ones, but other folks were working on this as well. And we formed a community, and we shared notes, and we helped build each other's sites. After the success of Jardincito, we started hearing from other neighborhoods, other communities that wanted to build nature play. We built right now we have 10 that we've built. This was the second one. And this one was it was a community on the southwest side where it was mostly grandparents taking care of their grandchildren. And so they wanted vegetable garden with nature play inside of it. So we built the Lawndale Triangle, which had a vegetable garden around the perimeter, a little walking path, and then in the middle was play island, we called it. There was one called the McKinley Play Garden, which was actually an old garden that nobody was using, that we owned, that was just kind of languishing. It had beautiful mature trees, but nobody was using it. New young families moved into the neighborhood, and they came to us. They had seen Jardincito, and they said, "Could we build Jardincito here?" We said, "Let's do it." So we retrofitted that garden, and we pulled out all the stops for this one. We built a tiny railroad, you can see. And we built another play deck, but also a lot of these wonderful architectural remnants. But this site is really incredible. And then learning from Berlin, we upped our game in terms of water play. So we built this water pump, which is, while a little bit expensive, is really an incredible focal point in the community on any hot day in Chicago. And it gets quite hot. Another thing we learned from our travels was how much kids loved vehicles, either ships or buses or spaceships. So we actually just bought a boat, put it and buried it, and the kids love it. And now we've done several other boats. Boats are weirdly, I didn't understand why, but I experienced it in Berlin. They spark the creative juices in a young mind, and suddenly you're a pirate and you're traveling the seven seas, or you're in a battle, and it's really incredible. The most ambitious garden we've done is called the Jardín Esperanza. And this is one, if you look on the left and right of these kids, there's these big ditches. So this is one where we got creative with stormwater management, which is such a big need in the country as global warming happens, and in Chicago really acutely. So we incorporated stormwater management into the garden. So they collect a huge amount of stormwater in these troughs, but we incorporated it into the design. So it's a moat. We've turned it into a moat, and there's a drawbridge there, although it doesn't open and close. And then there's a hot lava path through the moat. So there's boulders in there that kids can jump between. And it also has a water pump and a play kitchen. Those are my kids there, a little bit younger. The idea really started to snowball in Chicago. We have 10 gardens. Chicago Park District picked it up, and they've created a whole nature play program within the Chicago Park District. Now they have, I think, 13 play gardens within Chicago parks. This is one I visited a couple of weeks ago. And they follow the NeighborSpace model, adapted a little bit. But if you want to start a nature play site in a Chicago park, you have to have a group. You have to have a group behind it who agree you're going to help tend to this. Because if it has loose parts, you need neighbors committed to helping steward that site. It doesn't mean the Chicago Park District is going to ignore it and not pick up trash, but the community members are key to keeping those sites going. Without that ingredient, you end up with traditional playgrounds, because those are designed for zero maintenance. Not zero maintenance, but low maintenance. So community involvement leads to the possibility of nature play. It's a communal activity. Forest Preserve has similarly followed suit and started dozens of nature play sites within the Forest Preserve. And so looking back on the last 15 years, this is not something that NeighborSpace has done single-handedly, but a kid growing up 30 years ago in Chicago, nature play would not have been a normal thing that they saw. They would have to drive 45 minutes or an hour to go out to a forest preserve and experience that kind of environment, to have the experience of building a hut. A kid growing up now in Chicago, it's pretty normal. And that makes me incredibly excited because it was such a big part of my life growing up. And to know that kids in Chicago now can grow up and pick some berries in their own neighborhood without having an hour drive, or build a little hut at the community garden two blocks away. I think it's transformative, and it makes Chicago more livable, and it's making other cities more livable. And thank you so much.
Margot, I don't know what you feed these boys, but goddamn, they're good storytellers, huh? Thank you so much. Another round of applause, please. It is a privilege. Wait, we want this in Eugene, right? I mean, that's kind of, we agreed on it, right? Okay, thank you. Yep. Philip? Thank you. It's my privilege and honor to invite the president of Eugene Parks Foundation Board, Claire Sarret, to introduce the Parks Legacy Award.
Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here with you all this evening, and I'm equally pleased to be able to present this year's Parks Legacy Award. The Eugene Parks Foundation is proud to honor those community members who have made a lasting impact on the landscape of Eugene parks, recreational, and open spaces with the Parks Legacy Award. Over the years, this award has been granted to individuals who have demonstrated particular devotion to the preservation and expansion of these vital community spaces. This year, we take the extraordinary step recognizing not just an individual, but an entire organization whose dedication to our outdoor spaces and to the well-being of our community has inspired generations. The Obsidians. Yay! As Eugene's oldest, largest, and most passionately engaged outdoor organization, the Obsidians have enriched countless lives through adventure, stewardship, and service. Their dedication extends far beyond their own membership. Through decades of volunteer efforts on trails and pathways, along beaches and riverbanks, and through education and outreach, they have strengthened our community and deepened our collective connection to nature. Their focused, steadfast stewardship has benefited so many, which is why they are so deserving of this year's Parks Legacy Award. It is now my honor to welcome Denise Rubenstein, President of the Obsidian Board of Directors, to accept this recognition on behalf of the entire organization. Denise.
Well, I am honored to accept this on behalf of all Obsidians. I gotta say, Obsidians, you look great. You cleaned up so well. You are dry, you're not wet. I don't see a speck of mud on your clothes. You look great, I must say. And thank you on behalf of all Obsidians for this award. We have worked with the Eugene Parks Foundation, Eugene Parks and Recs for many years. Working on trails and open spaces. But I must say, we roll up our sleeves, we show up, and we do the work. This is going to get a little tricky on me. So I like to start with our mission statement because I think it's simple, I think it's elegant. Connecting our community to the mountains, waters, and trails of the great outdoors through exploration, education, and stewardship. Now, what's not to love about connecting the community? That's what it's all about. Well, we are the premier outdoor club in Eugene. We are the cool kids in town. And we kind of do it all. Through exploration, this is the really fun part. I will show you places we've been. Education, first aid, Knowles class, climb school, and we do monthly potlucks with an education focus. And stewardship. It's because of this award that we'll give stewardship a little more attention. Now, I want to step back for a minute and look at our beginnings. There are campfires involved. Sadly, our origin story does start with a tragic accident. There were 2 U of O students who, in 1927, were lost climbing the Sisters. And I would actually like to read Dr. John Bovard. He was the first Obsidian president, and I would like to read his account. Swirling down out of a clear September sky, a snow-laden mountain storm lashed the high Cascades, whipping fog, snow, and sleet about the Three Sisters area as it turned a pleasant afternoon into a catastrophic battleground of the elements. The storm blocked out the sun. Well, these 2 youngsters, they were college students, they were poorly equipped for any mountain climbing expedition and totally unprepared for this sudden storm. They became hopelessly confused and were unable to find their way back to base camp. Now, the headline here says that it was a hectic search, and it was hectic because they put out a statewide request for rescue help, and folks came from Bend, Mount Hood, Portland, the Dalles, and so it's over 200 folks, and somebody has to organize this search in the storm. And there was a pretty great contingent from the city of Eugene. So during that search, the Eugene contingent stopped at one point at the base camp. They're sitting around the campfire, and it became really clear that Eugene needed an experienced set of mountain climbers. They needed the organization for rescue. So the Eugene Outdoor Club was born. Well, then there was another campfire that was involved. So 1927, that's when the Obsidians started. 1928, we had our first summer camp, went back to the Sisters, and that's our very first summer camp. And it was suggested by the local newspaper that our club name, the Eugene Outdoor Club, is kind of boring. It's not sexy, and compare it to the Shemekadins, the Mazamas, where it just doesn't cut it. So picture this campfire and these 20 folks. They had just climbed 3 mountains in 4 days. First, they climbed North Sister, rested for a day. Then they climbed Middle Sister, rested for a day. And then they went over to the South Sisters and hiked there. So they felt that after 3 mountains in 4 days, they really were as hard as Obsidians. So we got a new name, we got a better name, and on the very next board meeting, that was changed. This is our lodge. It's home to lots of learning in the greater neighborhood. If you haven't been there, you are invited. We offer first aid classes, trail navigation, climb school, and our monthly potluck presentations also feature education. So let's jump back to exploration, education, and stewardship. We do know how to have fun. And summer camp in particular takes us far and wide. We've been doing summer camp since 1928. Rainier, Glacier, National Park, Yellowstone, Elkhorns, Mount Hood, too numerous to name. This happens to be summer camp at the Sawtooths. That's my little tent on the left-hand side. It was such a sweet little site. You can see the creek behind my tent and the jagged edges of the Sawtooths right there. So we'd get up in the morning, frost on the tents. I gotta say, washing your hands first thing in the morning, it was really ice cold water. But as soon as the sun rose above the mountains, it was absolutely lovely. And you see on that second picture, there are a couple of hikers testing out that log to see if it's our perfect spot for lunch. And, you know, by then, they're wearing shorts and short sleeves. I thought just a little bit of eye candy would be fun right here. We have a cycling arm, and, you know, I swear, every time I'm on a hike, I don't climb. Every outing, I always learn at least something new. Sue Walling took us through the city for cycling safely in the city. You do recognize that picture on the lower right-hand side, right? Come on, guys. Spencer Butte. Eye candy again. So, rainy season, we just dress for the weather. The first pick is Shotgun Creek. It's only 30 minutes outside of town. The picture in the middle on the bottom, you know that, right? Spencer Butte again.
It's always Spencer.
Education. Now, our monthly potlucks feature local talent. Marley Miller is a geologist from the university. Bill Sullivan is our trail master extraordinaire. He comes every year for presentations. In the top left, that's a regular potluck. We fill the plate. We fill the lodge. Bottom left is the Knowles first aid class. And then the two pictures on the right are navigation courses. Suzanne, who is current search and rescue, she's teaching a class using the Gaia app. And her whole piece was, when you travel, you need every tool in your toolbox that you can get, be it paper maps, GPS, All Trails, or Gaia. And I happen to know that when she taught that first class, one of the members was a die-hard paper map person. She would joke that she'd take a map out to her mailbox. She was die-hard. And I know after she took this class, she now uses Gaia all the time when she's on an unfamiliar trail. That was a really cool class. We offer a climb school. It's pretty popular in town. As a matter of fact, we notice a bump in membership in the spring just before climb school because we offer a reduced price and, you know, first dibs on signing up for the class if you're a member. So, do you recognize the picture on the left? Pardon? Yes, the columns at Skinner. See, I told you I'm bringing it back to Eugene. So, stewardship. This is pretty much what this award is for. On the picture on the left, we have two past presidents, John Jacobson and John Cooper. And the gentleman, the second one from the left, that was Peter Asai. He was our first trail maintenance chair. And we've had that relationship for a bit. Now, where's Matt Bell? Matt, would you just give a wave? Okay, so Matt is responsible for the affiliation with the city for a long time. And there's some cool things to share about this. Matt is the one holding the branch. He's always offering instruction. That's Mari having a ball in that pit there. So, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these, but so when he was at the university as just a young kid, graduated in 2004 with a degree in business, and then while you were still in college, you did do obsidian events? Okay, I read that you were interested in the obsidians. So that was your excuse. Stick with it. Okay, sure. Okay, so 2007, he joined the Obsidians. 2008, he led his first trail maintenance. Then he got a master's in business in 2009. And then Eugene Parks Award, he got his very own hero award. We had to take our whole club here to get this one, but Matt did it by himself. And in 2014, he was our youngest president. Now, if you join us on trail work on the ridge line that Matt leads, likely you will be lucky enough to get some of Janet's homemade snacks. No pressure, Janet, but those are worth coming for. Hey, notice too the rain gear here. Of course, we work in any weather. And then another key player is on the stewardship end is Darko. Darko, where are you? Give a wave. I promise you don't have to stand up. So back in 2021, when we did our strategic planning, it was determined that we wanted to add a combined stewardship with trail maintenance so we could expand the impact and track our activities. And Darko is the one who is going to take you far and wide, planting hundreds of trees in local parks. We built community gardens in Cottage Grove. And Darko is on the left picture. Well, that's pretty fuzzy, but Darko is the tall one there. But hundreds of volunteer hours. I don't even know that 700 number is accurate. But we do it all, and don't forget, we'll take you to the beach for beach cleanup. Oh, and the second picture on the right. Love a lake? What's better than tromping through the woods and circling the lakes? Goodness gracious. And then we have numerous affiliations. But I kind of want to give a shout out to the Scorpions. We have many Obsidian members who are Scorpions, and they literally do the heavy lifting, the machinery, the accreditation for the machinery. Keiko O'Brien, Dave Cooper, Gene Harris, Jonathan Jost, Megan McNabb, Marianne Ryder, Mike Smith, Sue Zenny, Larry Dunlap. Did I miss anybody? Got it? I'm just pretty proud to have all of those Obsidians as Scorpions. That's us doing the hokey pokey at the beach. So I would like to invite you. You can join us at the Get Acquainted hike. The next one is on December 13th at the lodge. Check at the website, sign up. Dorothy will be your host. And then you don't have to mark your calendar for this one because this is 2027. Plans are in the works, but it will be our 100-year celebration. Can I just ask Obsidians to stand for a second? I want you to see their numbers. And I want to thank Obsidians personally for always connecting our community and being such enthusiastic stewards of this land. And thank you to the Eugene Park Foundation for this lovely award. Thank you.
Just two comments before we leave. One, getting all this together, it take some money, but it's not about the money. It's about learning how to share toys and working together in collaboration. That's the key here. And that's what we do day in and day out. And when I get tired, then I'm like, it's not working. It's not working. Whatever. What I do is I call my friend Jerry Gatus, and who's here in the crowd, and he's like, nope, keep doing. And then I just keep going. So Jerry, thank you so much for being such a good friend. As always, on your way out, there are bottles of wine donated to you by King's Estate. Please take 1, 2, 50. I don't want to carry them back home, okay? Thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a good night, everyone.